So I was working on a side project. Shouldn't really have been doing it. Should have been doing the other projects. But I had a bit of an ADHD moment and I went off down a squirrel hole. Anyway, cut a long story short, I'm supposed to be using my Anycubic Photon S 3D printer. And in my workspace upstairs, if you've used SLA printing, you know that there's quite a bit of odor and it's quite unpleasant. So today I decided that it would be an amazing idea to bring the printer down to the outside workshop so I could get the prints going and still use my workspace for my office day job and my projects that I'm working on. Unfortunately, I neglected to remove the resin bath, which had some resin in it. And as careful as I thought I was, I managed to spill a bunch of resin inside the machine. I mopped that up as best I could, but we're still left with a bit of a mess and it's dripping out the back of the machine and I don't feel comfortable powering it up with resin dripping out of the machine. So I guess now I gotta fix it. Yeah. As you can see here, there's still some residual resin in the corners of the printer. So I thought it would be a good idea to fire off the UV curing light that I use to cure my models in this area just to seal up those cracks and crevices and stop it from leaking further down into the machine. Next, I start by dismantling the machine's base by taking 4 of the hex head bolts out of the bottom. And that allows me to remove the bottom panel. Undoing the 2 side screws and the 2 internal screws allows me to take the side panel off. And it's at this point that I realize that there's quite a bit of resin on the inside of the machine. So I thought it'd probably be a good idea to put some gloves on it. After I'm gloved up, I use some isopropyl alcohol and a tissue just to dilute the resin and remove it until I got a nice clean component. And I repeat this process on each of the panels that have got resin on. And this resin has gotten everywhere inside the machine. So this really did need a cleanup. Then I remove some of that hardened resin as best I can. I'm not overly worried about it being there because I know it's not going to leak down into the machine any further. And I give the screen a nice clean at the same time. I noticed there was some resin inside one of the air filters, so I dismantled the internal fan and gave that a clean as well. And it's at this point I decide to take a look at the internals of the machine just to see how the resin printer actually works. So, inside an SLA printer, it's not a great deal. So, let's stand her up here. So we've got our Z-axis, right? And we've got our plate, build plate that sticks off the end of there, goes down into the vat. We've got a screen that displays an image of the complete layer. And then underneath that, you have got your light source. And the light source is a UV 405 nanometer UV light that shines through the screen and projects the image onto the bottom of the vat and causes the photoresistant resin to turn from a liquid to a solid, sticking to the build plate by there. And then it moves up incrementally at a really small layer height. So anywhere from 25 micron, 50 micron, something really, really tiny, right? A lot finer control than you would get on an FDM 3D printer. So here is the main board. And what we've got is, interestingly, an Ethernet port. Ooh, I wonder what that's for. But then we've got a ribbon that goes through to our display. And then we've got an onboard stepper driver for controlling this NEMA 17 motor, which drives this Z-axis, and presumably some sort of logic system that reads the USB and gets the file and like converts the image layer with the height layer, and then turns it off, moves it up, down, exposes the next layer, rinse and repeat until it goes through the whole cycle. So an SLA printer is an incredibly simple thing by comparison to like an FDM printer, because an FDM printer you've got 3 axes plus an extruder, you've got calculations going on to tell the printer to move to these specific coordinates in space using G-code, all of that sort of cool stuff, right? So there's not a whole lot going on inside an SLA printer, which is really, really cool. But I am interested to know what this Ethernet port does, if anything. Right, so this is the Anycubic Photon S. This is a version 1.9.0 motherboard. So if you know anything about this Ethernet port and what it does, stick it in the comments below. And with that said, let's get it put back together, shall we? Right, so now it's back together. Let's see if we fixed it. So I'm not going to know for a bit whether or not this has resolved the issue. I'm hoping it has. We'll come back in 3 hours and see if it's worked. And 3 hours later, here we are. So it's printing, it's working, thank gosh. Time to get back to the side project so we can get things moving. Until next time, make something cool.